All right, welcome back to Calculated Risk with myself, Tyler Shoemaker, and Kelley Ford. We had a good show on Monday recapping week one, and now week two is already here and upon us. So we are going to kick this off talking about some of the marquee matchups of the weekend, and then we'll quickly touch on some of the under the radar games that we like this weekend. So first, Kelley, let's get to the marquee game of the weekend. Texas at Alabama. I'll let you kick us off here and run us through what your numbers have to say about this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. It is the marquee matchup of the weekend. It's actually down a little bit in my watchability score based on the movement that we had with Alabama going up and Texas going down, increasing the projected spread, which then decreases the projected competitiveness component of the watchability, but it still comes in as the number one game of the week for me. And it does feature my new number one power rated team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I have Alabama minus 12.5 in this one. It's an 81% win expectancy. Previous number one Georgia and number two Ohio State struggled for parts of their games in week one. Alabama looked good from the jump in their 56-7 win over Middle Tennessee. The Tide are now 1.5 points clear of the Bulldogs and Buckeyes. Tyler, I'd be curious where they are in yours. They boast the number 2 offense and number 6 defense in the nation. This is now projecting as Alabama's most difficult remaining game of the season by my numbers, and I do expect Nick Saban to have these guys ready for it after the scare they had in Austin last year, pulling out a 20-19 win early in the year in 2022. Even though Texas won 37-10 against Rice in week one, the Longhorns' performance did not live up to my model's expectations of what was previously the number 6 team in the country. So I now have them number 12 in the power ratings. The defense is actually up for me, Tyler, number 16 to number 12, but it's the offense that took a tumble. They were number 11. They're now number 25. I do like Alabama on both sides of the ball. This game is in Tuscaloosa, where Nick Saban has not lost since 2019 when Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers came to town and got a win on their way to a national championship. I have no doubt that Texas, held some things back in their week one game against Rice, so they didn't put everything on tape against for Alabama to study for this game. But I don't know. I like Bama on both sides of the ball. They're going to have to go deep into their bag of tricks, Texas is, if they're going to want a chance to win here. I just don't see it happening. I've got Alabama minus 12 at home. It's an 81% win expectancy for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I'm with you pretty much in alignment on everything you said there. Alabama's my new number one. I've got them number 2 on offense, number 4 on defense. Conversely, Texas dropped, like you said, they're number 9 for me now. Number 21 on offense and number 9 on defense. So I project this game Alabama minus 13.5 with a total of 56. I bet this game on Sunday when openers started to come out. I got Alabama minus 6.5. That's been bet up to 7.5, depending on where you're shopping. In terms of the impact that this game has, obviously we know what's at stake here, but I think in particular for Alabama, given that they play in the SEC West. With a win, I then would project them, all else staying the same, to finish the season with 11 wins, which, kind of keeps them in playoff contention, even if they didn't win the SEC. Whereas Texas, even with a win, because of their week one performance and how they got downgraded 2.5 points for me, with a win here, I would put them at 9.8 wins. So, 10-2 being the most likely record, which probably would disqualify them, or eliminate them from playoff contention. So huge stakes in this one. Obviously, again, I like Alabama projected 13.5. So we're in alignment on that one. That's interesting. Usually I feel like your numbers are much more in line with the market than mine are. And you're even, higher than the market, like my numbers are. So that makes me, feel even better about my wager I put in on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by the market line, to be honest. Like -7, right? You said, and yeah. I don't know. Again, betting world is not my world. I don't delve all the way into that, but my numbers generally are aligned with Vegas to be off by 5.5 points for me, and crossing 10, which of course is a big number, and not even being, not talking about 7 even. I don't understand, because this is a marquee game. This isn't some Maction game or some Conference USA game where maybe there's not as much sharp intel on it. So yeah, I'm surprised by it too. I don't know. maybe the odds makers are thinking Texas really held things back and Sark's going to have, some sort of dialed up game plan and he knows Saban, right? He's coached with him. And so maybe they're banking on that, but I don't know. Alabama's had some close calls at home. They haven't lost though it's been 4 years, and that was to a really, really special LSU team. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's at night. Bryant Denny's going to be rocking, and those fans are going to be, they're going to be behind the team. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm with you on the number.
Yeah, the last point here I'll make as far as where the number is on this game, I can kind of tell when I'm looking at betting lines on a weekly basis, I can kind of tell like, okay, the odds makers are still using a ton of preseason projection here, not really factoring in much on-field data or vice versa. And this line tells me that they're not really taking these teams' first games much into account. And I think a lot of people have dismissed, Texas played Rice, Alabama played Middle Tennessee. Like that's easy to dismiss on the surface, but as we talked about on our last show, like those data points are so valuable. So to kind of dismiss them just because they were, against lesser opponents, I think is probably the wrong way to go about it. So I feel good that you and I are aligned on that. Moving on to our number 2 marquee game, and this is, I'm sure you probably got this too. Nebraska, Colorado. I got by far the most response to my updated rating. It was like, no Colorado in the top 25. And I'm like, my gosh, guys, they were like 95th in the preseason. Like that, I'm not going to bump them up 70 spots. They did get a pretty generous 5.8 point bump for me since the preseason after that win against TCU. This is a game, though, that I still project as Nebraska as a 2.5 point favorite on the road. Again, I'm prepared to be wrong on that. I am trying to be ultra aggressive in upgrading Colorado, but I also still have to, do what I know to be true with teams like this, and you can't just overreact to one game. I've got Colorado 75th overall, 43rd on offense, 113th on defense, whereas Nebraska's 58th overall, 80th on offense, and 28th on defense. So, big defensive discrepancy there, obviously. So kind of contrasting styles here. I project this total at about 55, which is like pretty much FBS average. With a win, my numbers would boost Colorado up to about 5.3 projected wins on the season. With a win for Nebraska, it'd put them, we're talking bowl contention here. They'd be likely to finish 6-6. With a loss, both these teams looking like they're not going to be eligible for a bowl. So this is kind of a must win, I think, for both teams. Like if they're wanting to get to the bowl eligibility this year based on where the projections stand now, they both really need this one. And I mentioned I upgraded Colorado almost 6 points. Nebraska got a 1/10 of a point downgrade for their performance against Minnesota. So they didn't get penalized too bad for losing that game, because I think by most accounts they probably should have won it and coughed it up in only fashion that Nebraska can do. So, Kelly, curious here to hear what you have to say about Colorado in particular and just about this game in general.
You took a lot of my speaking points. I'm in agreement with a lot of those, Tyler. So I too have Nebraska -3. It's a 58% win expectancy. You said you're fully prepared to be wrong. So am I. I am prepared to be wrong on this, but that is what the model is saying right now. And I'll get to Colorado in a second. But since I have Nebraska favorite, I'm starting with Nebraska because that's what I do. I start with my favorite. They're the team I expect to win. At least the model expects to win. Nebraska, you mentioned it, coming off yet another one possession loss of walk-off field goal fashion, gave Minnesota a 13-10 victory. Tyler, at this point, it is simply ridiculous how many times and ways Nebraska can lose close games. It doesn't matter who's coaching. It doesn't matter where the game's being played. It doesn't matter what year it is. Nebraska finds a way to lose a one-possession game. That's what they are. They have to turn this around at some point. Been saying it for like 24 months, and I don't know when or how it can happen, but it just has to. Like, the law of averages says you cannot do this forever, but they continue to do it forever. So you mentioned you downgraded Nebraska ever so slightly. I mean, almost negligibly, but despite the loss, the Huskers actually are up a 0.5 point in my rating. So I had a little bit of an improvement from last week. They're coming in at number 50 now. The offense was worse than I expected. They fell from 68 to 76, but the defense was much better than I expected. They rose from 48 all the way up to number 22. I currently have the Nebraska defense as the best unit in this game, and they are certainly going to be tested by this Colorado offense that we got a great taste of in week 1 down at TCU. Only Oklahoma rose more in my power ratings this week than Colorado. We talked about our biggest risers and fallers on our previous episode. Colorado this week is up 6.3 points. That's a lot to move in 1 week. So they're now number 70. You said you have them like 75 or so. They're number 70 for me. Yep. It's a 28 spot improvement from last week. That's the largest jump I had in my rankings from week 1 to week 2. They are clearly better. Colorado, that is, better than I was giving them credit for. I'm not necessarily surprised by that. The same thing happened last year with USC. What did surprise me a bit was how easy the Colorado offense made it look against last year's national championship game finalist TCU. And I do think if we're giving Nebraska credit, or excuse me, Colorado credit, and we should, it's fair to ask, is this TCU team as good as we expected or thought they'd be? They very well could be. We've only seen one game. Maybe Colorado's just that much better than we thought. Or is the TCU team this year not like the TCU team of last year? And was 2022 maybe a one-hit wonder for that program? We don't know. It's too soon to say. It's just worth putting out there as a possibility. Time will tell. We'll get more data points, and these things will smooth out. The Colorado offense, I said they were so impressive. They jumped from 88 all the way up to number 47 for me. The defense remained unchanged, though. They're still number 108. I still have serious concerns about this defense. Will they be tested this week? Maybe, maybe not. But at some point, playing in that Pac-12, that defense is going to be tested because they have a lot of good quarterbacks out there in that conference. This game should be strength versus strength. The Colorado offense against the Nebraska defense. It might come down to which of the other units outperforms the expectations, and that could decide this one. So to recap it, I've got Nebraska -3 on the road. It equates to a 58% win expectancy for the Cornhuskers, but I would not be surprised at all if Colorado finds a way to win this because the model is still trying to catch up to what Colorado is versus what we were trying to project with a team that had so much turnover on that roster during the summer.
Yeah, and one last note here, just from a betting perspective, I'm not a huge betting splits guy as far as the percentages and all that, but I did take a peek at this one because I was curious. The last time I checked earlier today, over 90% of the bets and money were on Colorado in this game. So take that with a grain of salt, but I thought that was an interesting nugget that literally everybody is on Colorado in this game. Moving on to our last marquee game, I'm low-key excited for this game. Tulane is a team that, some casual fans probably aren't as familiar with. You maybe heard of their kind of Cinderella rise last year, but this team's very good. And their performance in week 1 was even better kind of than I anticipated it being against South Alabama. I considered betting South Alabama and didn't, and I'm grateful that I didn't because Tulane kind of put it on them. Kelly, I'll let you go first on this one. I'm curious your thoughts here on Tulane and Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'm not low-key excited about this one. I'm excited about this one. I'm making it known. This is my number 3 game of the week in terms of watchability scores. I have Ole Miss -8.5. It's a 73% win expectancy. The Rebels demolished Mercer 73-7 last week. Their KFord rating improved by nearly 5 points as a result. That's a big upgrade, especially when you're starting as high as they were. The offense improved from number 16 to number 7 behind Jackson Dart and some great play there. But the defense actually fell 31-36. Honestly, Tyler, that had, as I dive into the numbers around that area of the defensive unit rankings, had more to do with a movement of the units around them than it actually had to do with Ole Miss and their kind of unit rating moving, but their ranking was down. So not a whole lot to be concerned about there. It's going to be a tricky test for the Rebels. There's no doubt about it. It's not every day that you have a ranked Power 5 team going into a Group of 5 stadium. It's also not every day that that Group of 5 team is also really, really good. So it's going to be hard. I just think this offense, again, Jackson Dart and what they got going on, I just think they're the best unit in the game. And they should be able to put up a good number. Tulane's my highest power rated G5 team at number 38. That's up from number 44 last week. You mentioned it. They took down another kind of G5 power out of the Sun Belt in South Alabama by a score of 37-17. I mean, it was a convincing win. Tulane really kind of established themselves. Hey, we are the best Group of 5 program this year, and here's what we can do against other G5s. Now they're going to get their tests against Power 5 here, a good Power 5 in Ole Miss. The Green Wave offense for me, now up inside the top 20. The defense also improved about 10 spots. They're up to number 53 nationally. This is the only game all season, Tyler, in which my numbers project Tulane to be an underdog. They'll have the home crowd behind them. They'll have the confidence they can beat anyone following last year's Cotton Bowl victory over USC. It should be a phenomenal game. I mean, again, I got Ole Miss minus 8.5 on the road. It's a 73% win expectancy for the Rebels, but hey, don't count it as just a guaranteed win for this team, because if Tulane's able to get this one, and they've got all eyes on it, if Tulane's able to get this one, watch out, because they are then the clear favorites to be a New Year's Six representative for the G5, and they might be talking 12-0 season, put a conference championship on top of that, and see what happens. Cincinnati did it a few years ago. Now, Cincinnati had a non-conference win against Notre Dame, but maybe a non-conference win against Ole Miss ends up looking like that if the Rebels have a great season in the SEC. So it's going to be a great game. I'm not low key. I'm high key. I'm pumped.
Yeah, and this game, I'm not surprised that we are different in our projection on this, because as we've kind of established, my numbers generally are more favorable for the G5 team. So I actually make this like a pick 'em. I think my technical projection would be like Ole Miss -1. I think total of 61. So it sounds like we're pretty close on all the units. I think the difference here is the Tulane defense. I think my numbers are valuing the Tulane defense way more than yours are, and I think that's where our discrepancy comes in. So I've got Tulane number 22 overall, number 24 on offense, number 27 on defense, and then Ole Miss is my number 18 team. Moved up into the top 10 on offense at number 10, and defense, they're number 44. So the Ole Miss offense is the best unit in the game. And then, from an impact standpoint, Tulane with a win, I then project them 10.8 wins. So, most likely record at that point would be 11-1. Ole Miss, again, this isn't going to knock them out of bowl contention or anything like that. I think they're a good team. But, man, if they lose this game, their most likely record in my numbers is 7-5. I mean, they play in the SEC West like that. You got to win these games because you're going to get tested down the road. So this is going to be a huge challenge for them. Both of these teams actually improved in my numbers, as you mentioned, after their week 1 performance. Tulane jumped up 3.1 points and Ole Miss jumped up 2 points. So these are two teams on the rise, and I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a great game. And I know I did a podcast with some Tulane guys a while back, and I know they're pumped for this. They've had this circled for a long time, so I hope for their sake it's a really competitive game.
Ole Miss has to go to Alabama and to Georgia this year. You're right. They can't afford to not win this game. and Tulane, I mean, they're playing with house money. They're like, hey, let's leave it all out there. Let's see what happens. So that's, again, just another reason to get excited about this one. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I like that you have it almost as a pick 'em, maybe a -1 for Ole Miss. I'm down with that. I hope we get a good game just like that.
Yep, no doubt. All right, so let's run through some quick hitter under the radar games. And maybe some of these aren't even that under the radar, but Oregon, Texas Tech. Oregon, we talked about them on our last show. They pummeled their FCS opponent, Portland State, 81-7. Texas Tech, a team that a lot of people had high hopes for, lost their first game at Wyoming by 2. So this is another one of those betting split games where like everyone is on Oregon. So I'm kind of on alert for Texas Tech to do something here. I projected Oregon -6.5 with a total of 65.5. Oregon's my number 16 team, and Texas Tech's my number 35 team.
Yeah, I got Oregon in this one by about 9.5. This game did lose some luster when Texas Tech lost in overtime at Wyoming last week. I was really excited about it. I'm still excited. Like, I'll still be watching it, but it's not a top game of the week anymore because of that. And really not because of the result, but because of Texas Tech's corresponding drop in their power rating. Oregon came off a great week. I have them numbered 9 in the power ratings now. Texas Tech's number 34. Again, Oregon by 9.5 on the road. It's tough to win on the road, but that's a 76% win expectancy. I do like the Ducks to get this one done. Best unit on the field is their offense. Worst unit on the field, that Texas Tech defense, which is down to number 74 after last week's showing. So I think the Ducks are going to score points, and I think it'll be too much for the Red Raiders.
Yep, I tend to agree, and I think the betting public would agree with you also. The interesting thing here, again, from a betting perspective quickly, this line got bet up to 7.5, I think, at one point. And then there was some money that actually pushed the line back down to 6.5. So there's some Texas Tech believers out there. Moving on, this is another game that I personally bet at open. Boise State UCF. I project UCF minus 12.5 here with a total of 56.5. I bet this minus 2.5, and I even got favorable odds on it at minus 105. The line now sits at 3.5. I don't quite understand that. I mean, my numbers like Boise. Okay, Boise's my number 62 team, which is respectable for a G5 team. But UCF's my number 15 team. I think UCF's going to roll here. It's never easy to play at Boise, admittedly, on the Smurf turf, but I can't see a world where UCF doesn't win this one by a touchdown or more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this coming in. Like, if I'm projecting last week at this game, I had UCF -2. I now have UCF -9. UCF's power rating went up exactly 3 points from last week. Boise State's went down exactly 4 points based on their performances in their week 1 games. Boise State just absolutely got run off the field by Washington, and UCF ran Kent State off the field. So both these teams had very different week 1s. That's how I get to a -9 right now for UCF. You said you have number 15. I have UCF number 24. My Boise's right around you, number 65. Again, though, this is a best unit versus a worst unit on the fields here. UCF offense, number 22. Boise State defense, number 83. I think UCF's going to put up points, and it's hard. Again, like I talked about with Oregon and Texas Tech, it's hard to win on the road. The hardest thing you can do in college football is play and win on the road, and this Boise State crowd is most likely going to be very jacked up for this game. They know they need this one. You can't start 0-2 when you're Boise State and you have hopes of winning the Mountain West and of being that New Year's 6, that G5 New Year's 6 representative. You start 0-2, you've really put yourself behind the 8 ball, especially if Tulane ends up getting a winning as Ole Miss. You can almost just say, that's done. We're done. There's no way. So they need it. It's a big one. UCF's going to want to prove we're the big boys. We're in the Power 5. I know you guys, Boise State, 10, 15 years ago, you guys had your time. It's our time now. We're in the Power 5, and they're going to want to stamp that on them too. So, UCF -9, 74% win expectancy. Very close to 76 in the Oregon game. So both 3 out of 4 chances to win here for my favorites.
Yep. Yeah. And this is another one where I look to. I think going into last week, I would have had this UCF minus like 3.5. So, and that's where the line currently sits. So this is another one of those games that just tells me the odds makers are just not factoring in the week 1 performances enough. Our last game we wanted to touch on here, Washington State, Wisconsin. Washington State came out and hung a 50 burger on Colorado State. Wisconsin played pretty well, didn't cover against Buffalo. I project this game Wisconsin -6.5 with a total of 53. Washington State's my number 34 team, and Wisconsin's my number 14 team. I think this is a perfectly appropriate, like, under the radar game. I don't think most college football fans are too excited about this game, but I from a power rating perspective, I'm curious to see how this one shakes out.
It's a revenge game for Wisconsin, and didn't Washington State went into Madison? They went into Madison last year and got a win. It's interesting, Tyler. My projected line is the exact same as yours, -6.5. But you have Wisconsin power rated higher than I do, and you have Washington State. I think. What did you say you had Washington State?
Washington State is 34th.
30. Oh, okay, never mind. So you have them both power rated higher than I thought you had them, Washington State the other way, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. But okay, you have them both higher than I do. I have Wisconsin power rated number 20. They're down slightly from last week. They were number 19 last week. Washington State, though, they're up a good number here from 62 to 51. More importantly, they're up almost 3 points per game in the power rating. So Washington State's a very balanced team, offense, defense, both around number 40 in the unit ranks. The Wisconsin offense, right there at number 40, it's actually a perfect 41 versus 41. The Wisconsin offense versus the Washington State defense, that's probably going to be very even if I had to guess. The difference for me, though, Wisconsin number 15 defense against the Washington State number 40 offense. So I do think Wisconsin has the edge there. They do have to go to Pullman again. I'm favoring another team on the road. I don't like this. I don't like that I'm saying the team that I think is going to win are all these road teams. It does not work that way in college football. This we know, but when I'm trying to play the probabilities here and the percentages, I can't pinpoint which one of these is going to be a loss. One of these 3 road teams is going to lose as a favorite. They will, at least. I don't know which one it's going to be. By the numbers, I'd say this one's the most likely because 6.5 points, it's a 68% win expectancy for Wisconsin, which is lower than the other 2. Not by much, but just barely. So yeah, I like Wisconsin in it, and I think the difference is their defense gets the better of Washington State's offense.
All right, that's going to do it here for our Thursday show, week 2 look ahead. We'll be back on Monday to recap everything we saw from week 2, give you guys the updated. We both should have our updated power ratings at that point. We'll be back on a normal schedule. This week was just kind of weird with the Labor Day game, but we should have our updated ratings, be ready to talk about that on Monday. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts. For Kelley Ford, I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and that was Calculated Risk.